Hi everybody. Today we have a very special guest with us at Admission India's office. This is Dr. Kaustav Dey. It's my pleasure to introduce him. Someone who's actually done his Post Doctoral Fellowship from University of Oxford. He's also been a Max Planck Research Fellow in Germany. Did his doctorate from University of Heidelberg. The reason we wanted to actually bring his thoughts and views with you was because I think he is an ideal role model for every Indian student who feels that Indian education system might be limiting them in one way or other, and also who might think that you need to spend a lot of money to get foreign education and be at the top places in the world. And I think Dr. Kaustav has actually proven all those, notions wrong. It is my pleasure to be in chat with him today, and we're going to try and cover aspects such as, what made Dr. Kaustav as an Indian student capable of being chosen for Max Planck fellowship, and then eventually going to the top place such as University of Oxford. And I want to make his views known about his journey, the challenges he's faced, and how Indian students can actually learn from what he's gone through. So, Doctor, thank you for making time for us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Just call me Kaustav.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yes.
But why don't you start by telling us a bit about your childhood, your background, characteristics which you felt were important growing up as a young Indian, which enabled you to be prepared for these top places. I mean, many Indian students don't have that confidence. What gave you that confidence, as a young Indian?
Yeah, I'll start when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Kolkata, but my father was in defense, as you would know, right? So we moved from Calcutta to Chennai. So I did my schooling until the 9th grade in Chennai. Pretty normal life.
Okay.
Went to the closest KV. It was heavy vehicles factory. We used to work, and so went to the KV there. Studied there until 9th, and then went to Hyderabad. For my high school, like 10th, 11th, and 12th. That's why I got introduced to this craze, all this craze of IIT exams and AIEEE and all that craze that was going on in Hyderabad. It was crazy. I got into that mold. I'll get into that a bit. From there, I moved to Pune. Actually, I did engineering. I got into NIT. I went and I started doing electronics and communication engineering in NIT Durgapur.
Okay.
And I did not really like it. I did not love the environment there. Although I think I would have loved engineering, if I would have stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty good at maths and all the STEM subjects. So it was kind of no interest for me to go and do that. But the place just did not sit very well with me. Right. I felt that I was more interested into physics for whatever reasons. So I decided that I'll move from there. I'll drop out of engineering and I'll go and do physics.
So you moved from BTech to BSc Physics?
Yes. But
odd decision. Okay.
Yeah, that was odd. That was crazy. Except for my parents, everybody was like, "What are you doing?" Right? But I remember, 10th standard, I used to wake up in the nights, and my father got me some physics books, and I used to solve the problem. I used to start at 12 a.m. and finish at 2 a.m. My mom would be very angry with me. I would not wake up for breakfast and stuff. But I remember from that time I was really passionate about physics. So I wanted to carry that forward. But it was not an easy transition. I had to, in the BTech, I decided I'll give IIT exam again. Mm-hmm. And I got an IIT rank. I got into, 6,000 around. That was my AIR at that point. Okay. And that was enough to get into ISA.
Right.
So ISAs were coming up at that point. They had huge investments from Government of India. And they were trying to build a very good institution then. So I'll just go to ISA then from there.
You went to ISA Pune.
And I went to ISA Pune, far away from Calcutta, from home. And then I went to Pune. Pune was regarded as one of the best. It was the earlier one, among the first ISAs, along with Kolkata, to be set up.
Okay.
So they had a very good integrated BS and MS program.
Right. Okay.
So that's when I started. It was pretty good. It was just not physics. We learned everything first 2 years. all like maths, chem, physics, and bio and humanities. And then I had a major in physics from there. So yeah, after ICER, I think ICER is what set me up for the career that I was looking for. It was a really intellectual environment and very constructive environment there. We were always like, everybody was motivated to do science and physics and all the other science subjects. We went into the lab pretty quickly. Like there was this credits that you can get in semester where you can just go and do some research projects very early on. And that experience really helps, because at the end, if you want to go abroad, it's not a competitive exam anymore like Indian system. It's your experience that matters. So at ICER, it set me up because I had a couple of, so there was a culture of, like going abroad from ICER. During your BSc and MSc, so there I applied for DAD fellowship. I went to Germany. I did some semiconductor physics. It was brilliant to see the European, science and the infrastructure there.
This was during you integrated?
During my course. So I went after, third year summer break.
Okay.
So it was a fully funded internship to Germany.
And that was again provided by the institute itself?
That was provided by DAD. It's a German organization which does the student exchange thing. So they take people from India and from many countries, but I think that was from the Indian cohort. So that really helped. So I did 2 of these, like one in my third year, one in my fourth year. I went to Canada in a MITAX fellowship. Okay. And so I got into, research and lab experience. I am an experimental physicist. So I got into that lab experience very, very early. And that's the experience that really propelled me ahead, along with ICER's structure that you have to do a 1 full year of thesis, master thesis. So I had, on the back of all these experiences, when I went for my PhD application, it really stood out.
Apart from being in ICER, which obviously enabled you to have a, environment which was research oriented, lab setup oriented, the culture already existing wherein people wanted to go abroad after doing their degrees there. But these fellowships which you applied while studying there, you applied them on your own?
It was all on my own. Yes. Yeah, and I had the help from my seniors. Okay. I was like 5th cohort or 6th cohort, so the seniors above, they who had come to the institute before, they were really like, we were talking to each other about like what we can do and stuff. So there was a lot of knowledge exchange with the seniors. So seniors were like, okay, you should apply for this scholarships, and you need this, you need this GPA, or you need to, showcase this in your application, do it this way.
There was a bit of guidance.
There was a bit of guidance from the seniors, yeah.
Brilliant. Yes. So before we actually talk about your time in, say, Germany, Canada, UK, I wanted to just understand how confident you felt as an Indian coming from KB setup, BSc setup from ICER. How confident you felt in terms of your skills and ability to be at par with people whom you went to do internships and research projects with. Did you feel that in any which way you were behind them, or your skills were inferior to them and they had more exposure? I want to understand that, because many Indian students have that tendency to feel that. Did you feel that?
So while applying, no. I would say I was really confident, and I was excited.
Okay.
And that's what ICER set us to do. You dream. You dream that you want to do science which changes the world.
Okay.
So I was very confident. I went ahead with that. I had no idea how to do application at that point. My cover letter is a bit of a joke if I go back and see it right now. Okay. So I wrote the cover letter to my elder sister, and I said, like, can you please check it? And she was like, okay, okay, we need to sit down and have a chat.
This needs to be changed.
this needs serious corrections, right? So, but what ICER set me to do was like, be confident in what you're doing. There's going to be mistakes, but once you take that action, you're going to figure out and learn from those mistakes. So I did lots of mistakes. I was confident in applying. I was confident when I landed in Germany. But when I started working, my confidence took a bit of a hit.
Yeah, that's the part I want to know about, because look, there are 2 ways of looking at it. One, Indian students can feel a bit of inferiority complex going there thinking that okay, we're not very well prepared, there is a void in learning, there is a void in our exposure. And the second thing is that you being confident in your own ability, fine, but what happened when you reached there? So that's what I want to know.
So this was during the internship, right? Yeah. When I first went there, I mean, I was a bit shocked in a very pleasant way. You know, looking at the facilities, I went and worked in a semiconductor lab, which was very, very well known in Germany.
Okay.
It was in University of Leipzig.
Okay.
And I have never seen that instruments in ISER or anywhere in India. You know, there are probably many instruments there which are not at that same level that we have here. So I was a bit surprised at that point because I thought at that point that I'm not at the level. But you know, my thought process was like, okay, I'm not at the level, but you know, we have a hustle culture here. You know, we hustle through things because things are ideal sometimes, but most of the times they're never ideal for us. But what as Indians, we love to work hard.
Yeah.
We love to excel, and you know, we want to put in effort. Once we are there, we want to also prove ourselves. So that one was there. So I was just, I will go to the lab a bit early. I will like talk to them. I will work a bit later, you know, put in that effort to maximize my time that I was there and also learn, you know, whatever there was to learn. So once you do that for some time, once I did that for some time, I was coming up to the level of what they were doing. It's just, you have to understand that it's a different culture. Whether you are in a public space or whether you're in a professional capacity.
Yeah.
And no wonder wherever you move between any country, it does not have to be between India and Europe.
Yeah.
It could be between India and anywhere else. There has to be an adjustment time. And with a bit of hard work, with a bit of, that I want to, you want to do good, which I had, that I want to do good. They provided me all the support there to come up to the level of the lab, and I did a very good internship there. Actually, it was just 3 months, but by the end of it, my professor was there. My PI, I think it's called PI, but it's professor. It's called here. Was very impressed, and he said that if you want to come back for a master project or a thesis, you're always welcome here. If you ever make a publication, we'll definitely put your name, which I was told is kind of a rare thing for him to say.
Very good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And which generally, with all the respect and without being negative about Indian system, it doesn't happen so often. I mean, the credit is not always given where it's due. And here you are, where people are forthcoming of actually putting your name in publication, while you've just been there for 3 months. Yeah. Of course, you've earned it, right? But the fact that you've been given what you've earned also speaks about culture and the personalities you have out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different sort of a work ethic, that we have, and that takes adjustment as well.
This was Germany, and how about Canada? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, like Canada. So Canada was similar, like 4th year. I changed my field actually after Germany. I was in semiconductors there, and I was like, okay, semiconductor is pretty advanced. I want to do fundamental physics. So when my professor, when he said, okay, come back for masters, I was like, I'm probably going to change my field over there. So you see, the confidence level had come up, when I was there in Germany. So in Canada, I applied for MITAX and I went to McMaster University in Hamilton. It's close to Toronto.
Yeah.
And it was very similar as well. So
similar to Germany.
Similar to Germany in terms of their work style. It's slightly different as well. Like, it's a different culture again. And even there, I felt when in the first month, again, the same feeling, okay, I'm not up to the level here. It was a different experiment. It was a different field altogether. I'm not up to the level here, but I got all the support both in Germany and Canada. They said, okay, we'll teach you whatever needs to be learned. And then it's always those base qualities. You come back, you want to do good, you want to excel, and you want to hard work. And then there is the support system there, which is very, very important.
Indeed.
So they trained me, and yeah, I was there. And by the end of 3 months, I made a material. I was doing quantum materials, which they had not made previously. It was a bit difficult to make. I tried 30 times, I failed 29 times, and I succeeded 1 time. And they were very proud of that as well. So it worked out quite well in Canada.
Well done. Brilliant. I'll just take a pause talking to you, but I just want to speak to my viewers here.
Yeah, sure.
Because these are young Indian students. And I want to highlight that while Kaustav has had that environment in India, and with ISER and with Germany and with the Canadian internship, I think the common denominator I see out here is that you've taken a lot of initiative to make things happen for yourself as well. And I think that's something which I have also observed with my time in the UK. Like when you go to study, the universities will have everything in terms of the setup. But if you don't make use of that setup, you're not going to be able to actually make the most of it. People are always there be in life or academics to actually support you, long as you are doing the core of the work which you have to do. So both with your applications with internships, and then with your time out there, and with your decisions wherein you said your parents were supportive of you moving from BTech to BSc, which I think not many people would do out.
It's a rarity out here, yeah.
So I think the fact that you've been able to communicate and take initiatives in a manner wherein people understood it, and they could see what you're doing, they could see the effort backed up by intention out there. I think that has brought a lot of positives. So the advice here remains that while the world remains same for most of us in terms of opportunities and offerings, it is what we do. What we do to make the most of those offerings. Going forward, I also wanted to actually understand when you did apply for Max Planck Fellowship. How did you go about it? And there is one specific point I wanted your inputs on was some people are married to a PhD research topic. They're very passionate about it and they don't want to change it. And some people, they say, okay, we're flexible, but long as we're getting an opportunity wherein we're not paying, rather being paid at times, right? And I want to know how much were you being supported financially. So did you have room for maneuver for your own topic, or you had to go with whatever was being offered by the project?
There was a lot of room to maneuver. So the Max Planck. So the way I understood about that opportunity was like when we were doing the research, we were collaborating. So at least my supervisor in ISA, he was collaborating with a professor in Heidelberg where I did my PhD.
Okay.
So the professor from Heidelberg asked my professor at ISA that I'm going to have a job opening for a PhD. It was not a job opening; it's a PhD vacancy as they call it.
Yeah.
And if you know somebody who would be interested, please ask them to apply. Right? So I did not apply immediately. He told me about this. So I first went and wrote an email to the professor in Germany, in Heidelberg, and we had a chat. And then he said there is an international Max Planck research school which hires people. Why don't you apply through that? Okay. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known.
Okay.
I knew Max Planck from before. It's a very, very well-known research society across the world. But I had no idea how they were hiring. I had some support from my PI in ISA because he was in Germany in one of the Max Plancks there in Dresden. So when he said that, so I went ahead and looked at the application forms, and it was very similar to what I had done for my dad internship and MITAX. So I was slightly prepared from there. I had to write my cover letter, my CV, and I had people in my seniors, and my professors who could look at the CV and the cover letter, curate it. So I did that, and I submitted the application. They invited people from various countries to Germany in Heidelberg. I went down there. I had to make a presentation to a panel. And that is where it's very important because that presentation is a research presentation. It's not what you have learned in your course during your BSMS. It's what's your experience in terms of lab and research work. Because in these countries, Germany and all of these Western countries, people during the masters, they get very engaged with their research. So if they have a very good thesis at that point, so based on that thesis, they're selected for PhD. So being at ISER, I had that experience via my internships and working in the lab in ISER. So when I went for the interview, I was asked to do a presentation, as I was saying. And at that point, the experience that I had via DAD and MITAX internships and working in ISER in the lab for 2 or 3 years, so I showcased that. And that's very important because based on the research experience, and I was applying for an experimental position, my lab experience, they selected me. So it's very different from a selection here, because I think you have to go through an exam to get selected for a PhD. It's not like that. So one important thing to highlight is, if you're looking for a PhD outside, in the Western world, especially, it's very important that you have the lab, you have the practical experience of that research topic that you're applying for.
In the STEM courses, that is.
In the STEM courses, yeah, I did physics. So in the STEM courses, so I remember one of my friends, and he went to Alexander von Humboldt fellowship, research fellowship, and he after ISA he did not apply that much. He went to Bangalore, to ISC Bangalore. He spent a year there. He gained experience in the lab, and with that he applied. So and that got him the position. So even if you're in an Indian university where you don't have the option like ISA, or you probably didn't have the opportunity to have this DAD and MITAX fellowship, I would highly recommend that be a research associate or a research assistant in one of the research institutes, and I'm pretty sure that'll be easier to find and gain that experience. Work there, because it's not a drop year like we consider here. No, it's not a drop year. It really adds to an experience which will actually help you to gain a very good PhD. And I'm talking a bit from the European sense as well, because in America, in US, it's slightly different, because you have some examinations to crack there, but you still have to showcase those experience. So a lot of my friends, they've gone to Berkeley, Princeton, Cornell, MIT, Harvard, and they had that GRE they gave. I did not want to do GRE, so I went to Europe. But they did the GRE, but they had those experience to show in their cover letters and on all that. So I would really encourage, if you didn't have the opportunities like I had, there is always an option to gain that.
I think that's an excellent advice, especially for Indian students. As you mentioned, you're saying that they can actually attach themselves as a research associate rather than counting it as a drop year, build on their lab experiential learnings profile, which enables them to actually apply for these fellowships.
Absolutely.
Because that's the key thing they look for.
Yeah, and it would be easier to also go to one of the big institutes. I think it gets easier to get as well, because there are not many people doing that. They're directly going to PhD. So you can come to ISA, you can come to IISc, you can go to RRI and all the Bangalore institutes. You can do it somewhere else. But as long as you do the research, you'll also understand, in that, whether you're truly interested in research, truly passionate about doing a PhD, because that's a big commitment. And also understand the field, that whether you want to do that field, because it might look fancy from outside, but when you start working, things are slightly different.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of testing time period, whether this is for you or not.
Exactly.
You want to commit for this.
Gives you the flavor, of what's going to come next.
Another thing I wanted to ask you was, as a Max Planck research fellow, how were you financially supported? Were you paid a salary, a stipend? How did you get paid?
I was paid everything over there. So the contract there is like a job contract in Germany.
Okay.
So I was given a proper salary where I paid the taxes, and the rest of the money was for me.
Can we ask how much?
Yeah, I think those days it was, the gross was somewhere between 2,700 to 3,000 euros per month. And then with the tax and everything, as a Max Planck, I got 1,700 or 1,800 euros. This is about 4 years back. Started, which is very easy to sustain yourself there in Germany.
Yes, indeed. And one more question related to this was the language barrier.
Yeah.
You're going from India to a non-English speaking country. Many people, many students, young Indians feel that they can never make that transition. They're too old to pick a language. How did you encounter that challenge?
I would say it was challenging for me, and the reason is that because one thing I did not know or understand, even though I've been to Germany before, is that you need to learn the language. Life gets easier if you know the language there. My PhD wasn't completely English, so work-wise I had no troubles, but you have to understand that there is a life outside lab. You have to live a life there, and so learning that language only makes it very easier to get involved in the culture. I did not know the language I knew just enough to get by. And when I came out of Germany, moved to UK, my level was A1, A2 German. But it would have been far more easier if I had known the language. And it's interesting also to learn a new foreign language. It's exciting as well.
Sure is. But you telling me that you kind of did not really need the language for your PhD and everything in terms of being employed and continue to complete your PhD, you did not need German?
No, I did not. So if you're talking work-wise, no, I did not need to show German. I need to show that I could speak good English.
Okay.
That was necessary for the PhD.
That's interesting, and that's where Germany is, very, very interesting in terms of offering. There is such a huge number of universities which actually offer you to study for free without really paying anything if you can pick or learn their language to a certain level.
And they paid for me to learn the language as well.
So they paid for you to learn the language as well.
I was a part of the graduate school. And the graduate school, they get students from everywhere, all over the world. And they understand that you will not know the language when you come here, So they said, okay, we'll pay you and you can go and learn the language in the university or outside.
Before again I move to your time in Oxford, I wanted to ask you one more question about your time in Germany. So you completed your PhD out there, right? And you were working. So did you not want to settle there as a country? It comes across as one of the very, very good countries to settle in.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a person who wanted to try different places. So I think I'm one of those people who wants to try different things and wants to travel and move around. So when I was in Germany, I spent 4 years, and I was like, let's go to another country. Let's travel to another country, and that's what PhD gives the freedom to once you're in sciences and you're doing PhD, because you can always travel to different countries and for the conferences, but also have scientific positions in different countries and move around. So I wanted to use that, and also felt like maybe I'll go to a country where I can speak the language. So so naturally in Europe it was the UK. So I felt like I'll go and try there.
And you ended up in creme de la creme. University of Oxford. So a prestigious University of Oxford Post Doctoral Fellowship there. How did that come about, and what were your learnings there? And specifically, I mean,
how did I go there?
How did you go there? And, I mean,
it's an interesting story.
Who just cares about University of Oxford? I mean, it's just at a different level. So tell us about your time, your experiences there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so getting as a student in Oxford is very different from getting as a specialist, right? Like as a postdoc. So I finished my PhD and I went to Oxford to do a postdoc. And so the difference is like, while I was finishing PhD, I was like, okay, I'll look in the UK. So most important when you're doing in postdoc is find the right group, the research topic that you want to do research, and find the right group. And Oxford had a very good group, as they would have for most of the fields, right? So it turned out that I was just going for a coffee in Heidelberg, and one of my colleagues, he knew that I wanted to go to UK, and one of my colleagues said, there's a position opening in Oxford, and I said, really? I did not look. And he said, yeah, have a look. And it turned out the deadline was 2 days later. I would have missed it if I was, I didn't meet him. So he said it's open. So again, I wrote to professor and I said, can we have a chat? And it's always important, like you write to the professors, and if you have the right background, they're always open to chat most of the time. So we chatted, and I sort of felt that I was a good fit. So then I applied. It's the usual cover letter CV kind of application. Got an interview and then got the position. And I think the only reason I got the position was like my research skills were completely, absolutely fitting to the job criteria that they had posted. So including the special instruments that they had, I used that existed like very few in the world, the kind of instrument that I used, and I had used it in Germany. So that was the X factor.
Yeah, I was privy to one of the discussions you had, and the machine you were working on was what, £1 million?
£1 million, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's about £1 million.
was only with University of Oxford and Warwick, was it?
In the UK, only University of Oxford, I think. They're probably installing it somewhere else as well, but only University of Oxford. In Germany, there are 3-4 places because the instrument was built in Germany first.
Okay.
And the United States has a few of them as well. So now they're spreading that. So at that point, that was the only instrument they had, and I had experience of running it. So I think that was the X factor of why they selected me.
I'm sure there were many other X factors of being in Oxford. One of them being, access to so many privileged places. I remember you took me to one of the nicest places there.
Oxford Union.
Yes. You want to tell us more about it? Did you get a chance to have some events, being present at some events in Oxford Union?
I was like they did the debates. They had all this nice Breaking Bad. I think Walter White from Breaking Bad was there in one of the shows there. So I was there. It was really a great environment. I think that's what sets Oxford apart from other universities. I would say that research, depending on the topic, every universities have their strengths and weaknesses, just like Oxford. But what Oxford does is it opens up to so much more. So when people ask me, what did you do the most in Oxford? I would say I did not do so much physics. I went to the social sciences department more because the events they were doing there regarding entrepreneurship, regarding leadership, communication, and all that. I loved going to those networking events within the social sciences division, the business school and all that. I did that more than I did physics in Oxford.
And they did open a different dimension of your own self by
Absolutely.
kind of building you up. Because you already had a very, very strong research skill base, but then what you're mentioning now of opportunities Oxford offers to everybody who is on campus. It kind of opens very different doors for them. Now, one of the doors you kind of open for yourself is where you are currently.
Yes. So I work as a research portfolio manager in UKRI. So it's UK Research and Innovation, and this organization funds research across UK for all the universities.
Funds research means research funding comes from this particular organization.
The largest research funding in the UK. So this is a public body from the government, and it's sponsored by the government, specifically DCIT, and we fund about £8 to £9 billion every year to the UK research and innovation community.
Would that cover the whole gamut of disciplines or?
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything. We have 7 research councils and an innovation arm and Research England, and they cover the breadth of research across UK.
Okay, and in terms of the disciplines that are being favored, is there more funding towards STEM, or do you actually have a fair spread based on say someone who's studying literature? Are you even funding those departments?
Absolutely. So we have like Arts and Humanities Research Council, AHRC. They look at those side of angle. We have ESRC, which is Economics Research Council. So they fund those research. And I work for EPSRC, which is Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. So what happens is when the money comes through the door from the Treasury, so we have a top level advisory board. They look across the disciplines and they divide the budget accordingly. So there's a balancing that goes on at the top, and those trickle down to each research council.
So from being funded yourself as Max Planck and others, and now you're funding people.
Yes. Yeah. That's one way to put it.
Did you see that your role has become much more impactful now?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, one thing I wanted to mention is like in Oxford also I did some very good research when I was there. It was just not social sciences department. So when I first started, we sort of made a material which as of yet has not been published by anyone. So probably we were the first people to make it in Oxford. And that was a collaboration which I started with Germany, and then we sort of tackled that problem there. So that was there. But I realized at that point that do I want to continue in this field? Because I was very much an academic, and all my professors thought that if anybody wants to be an academic from their lab, this is the guy who would be a future professor or something. But at some point I started thinking at Oxford that is this the kind of impact that I want to have from my life?
Okay.
So I was working in a field which was in quantum materials, which was very well established for 100 years or so. Quantum mechanics came 100 years back, and it's been there since then. So I felt like I would do good there. I was doing good. I had very good publications and stuff. But I thought, like, is this the kind of impact that I want to, have at the end of my life? So my sister was there, and we had a big break. I had some surgery at that point, and that sort of gave me the window to ask myself this and be honest about it. And I was like, probably not. I want to go and do something with much more impactful, or a different kind of impact. Doing science is an impact in itself.
Yes.
Advancing knowledge is an impact in itself. But I wanted to have a different kind of impact. More socio-economic impact from the work that I did. So then I think on the backdrop of this, the opportunities that Oxford opened up to talk to different people, to network to different people, to dabble into different divisions and see what everybody is doing, what are the pathways of impact, or what are the different job pathways for me from there. So that opened up, and that sort of gave me a lot of options of where I could possibly go from here. And Oxford laid that groundwork for me. So then I decided that probably I'll go and do something else.
Brilliant. So as a lab scientist, I mean, your work was mostly in lab, right? The
Yes.
creative work. How much of a challenge it is for people who are in a lab setup, scientists and people who actually work towards a problem which you don't see exponential or sometimes even incremental progressions being made on day-to-day basis? How do you keep yourselves motivated and driven towards making sure that you are giving what you have to give every day in, day out?
Yeah, I would say we are a bit like a crazy lot of people who are doing fundamental science, Like, it's a good question. I think, like, when you get in that mold, when I got in that mold of doing research, there is so much to solve at a very fundamental level. There's so much to solve at a fundamental level that each and every opportunity, that becomes your life. If you look at outside, it feels like, oh, this is a very small problem. But when you're in the lab, doing it for you, that becomes the life inside that bubble, So that was for me. So I had so many research questions that I wanted to solve myself.
Yeah.
And I was in that very specialized, focused zone. For me, that was the best problem to solve. But when I zoomed out, I was like, there are many more problems to solve, So once I started writing a paper, and when it came out, the publication got citations. So that sort of motivated me that, I can do more work which people will recognize in the community. So in the research, community is very important, and where you stand within the community, how you go up the ranks, that's kind of motivates the researchers. And there are people who just want to advance knowledge, that's their passion. Look at the abstract maths, for example. Look at theoretical physics and particle physics. They are driven by curiosity, not really a socio-economic impact of what's going to come later. How is it going to change the world? They just did it because they were curious.
Yes.
So I was initially that kind of a person.
But all in all, what I've kind of observed is that all these curiosity-related forays, progressions which scientists and people who have actually ventured into these three areas have in so many ways contributed to the real-life problems we're solving right now.
Absolutely.
I remember meeting you a few months ago, and at that time you were talking about how chemistry is changing the world right now, and it's at hardcore, level right now, with all the impact being made by material science that you were talking about. So in Oxford, you said that you created something unique which has not been created.
Probably, yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
So it's going to be marketed and brought to life, or made viably available later sometime?
That's a very good question. I'm going to say probably not. So the problem that we are trying to tackle is like we are trying to see some sort of high energy physics phenomena. Like CERN, right? Like they have this big accelerator and stuff. So the physics of that could be translated into very small material. That was the idea. Which seems kind of revolutionary, right? When you think about it, like spending that accelerator physics coming into a small material, which is easier to make, takes a few £100 to make rather than billions of pounds in the sun. So that's curiosity, as I was mentioning, right? Like to see that. But to make that material, it was hard. At least there were no written reports in the world about that. So that was the challenge. Like, okay, we'll be the first ones to do it, and that was motivating. Like, let's do it. We'll be the first people to do it, and we'll see this physics, and that'll be something revolutionary. We weren't thinking like, if we find this high energy physics, will that change? Will that solve climate change? We were not thinking like that. We were like, we'll be the first ones to do it. That was kind of the motivation.
That's one of the phenomena I think which scientists and anybody who actually works in that field has to continue to live with, both in academia and research field. So coming to your time with UKRI now, I wanted to understand that if we talk about the opportunities Indian students might have to look in terms of funded PhDs and funded research degrees in the UK, how should they go about it, and what is available
for the funded PhDs? Yeah, UK system is very different from the German system, I feel. So at least at UKRI, we provide funding for Center for Doctoral Training. It's called CDTs. And CDTs is a cohort-based model where every year there are some positions which open up and people can apply from anywhere to those CDTs. So there is, so I would encourage students to look at the CDTs model, because CDTs I feel is very unique in the way they train PhD students.
Okay.
They have a cohort-based education. They bring in industrial partners depending on the topic you're working. They bring in public policy, public bodies, policy, civic bodies, and all that. And they try to engage, have a multidisciplinary take on PhD, as opposed to Germany, which was you're tied to your research topic. So CDT model it's competitive, but it's a brilliant model, I feel, to train, because that gives a well-rounded development of a PhD. So you understand that just doing research is not the only way to impact. There are so many other ways that I can go. Like, for example, I can do industrial R&D.
Yeah.
I can go into public policy and influence policy with my research if you're in those areas. I can go and work for a charity, and promote science and stuff. I can be a scientific writer or in the communication side of things. So it opens up, and it tells you that science is not only limited to labs and your computers. There is so much more that science can influence, and that's why I love the CDT model that we fund via UKRI. There is DTPs which we fund. So this is like doctoral training program. We do block funding.
Right.
So we give money to all the universities, and then they can hire PhDs accordingly. But UK has much more. They have lots of fellowships and scholarships, which takes Indian students from here to there. For example, couple of my friends, they were in Cambridge University. They got the Manmohan Singh fellowship, I think, and they went there. So Indian government, I think, funded them via that program, and they went to Cambridge University. They did their PhD. There was Indira Gandhi fellowship. I think one of my colleagues, she had that to University of Oxford.
So, of course, there are quite a few fellowships available exclusively for Indian students from India. But also, as you said, the UKRI also kind of is open for Indian students to apply to those fellowships, and the ones which you guys are making available as funding. And see what their credentials can take them.
And I would always say, it's a hard thing to navigate. You've just come out of your masters, and you want to navigate this huge space of funding, positions and stuff. I would always say write to the professors there. In your research, you might have come up with the professors that you follow or that you cite in your masters. So write to the professors that have a chat, because they would know like which would be the right way to come in.
That's in fact that is one thing which we as students do that. We help them identify the right professors as well at times, identify all possible opportunities they can actually explore. We encourage them to understand the whole pathway they need to actually explore, make a checklist that do this, do this, do this, make sure you have a proposal, good credentials, how to write a good cover letter, how to make sure that you don't just focus on one or two universities, maximize your base, apply to all possible scholarships, which you did, scholarships or fellowships, which you did in your case. And obviously,
I wish I had you guys at that point, because I definitely think I got a bit lucky in trying to find, because it was a hard space to navigate.
yeah, it is
to
a
be
very,
honest.
very hard space, but I believe what you said, I think in your case, you took a lot of initiative, which is not the case with many of the students. And most of the times, they hit a roadblock, they're not able to actually navigate path through that, as you said. And if you are one of those students who are actually looking to get help with your PhD, scholarships, funding, we as a company, I think we are one of the only companies in India who understand how to do it, and we've done it for successfully with quite a lot of Indian students through Admission India, and students from outside India through Admission Abroad, which is another brand which we own. So, I mean, if you are a student who is struggling to go through that pathway, do not hesitate to contact us. Coming back to Dr. Dey, I also wanted to, since, as I said, I mean, I personally feel that you are one of the role models young Indian students can look at from the perspective of, notions which hold these students back. Oh, I need to spend a lot of money to go abroad. Oh, I need to have excellent grades. Oh, if I've not done my BTech, I can't actually get into, STEM industry or STEM academia. And you kind of, as I said, proved all those notions kind of wrong. And perseverance, hard work is definitely there, but I think the key word also comes as initiative, taking initiative and making things happen. So, on a lighter note, so you moved from India, you've been to Canada, you've been to Germany, and you're in the UK now. So, are you someone who's enjoying life there and you want to see your future there? You enjoy your life there and you want to settle abroad?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm open, I'm flexible, but I think like the kind of work that I'm doing right now and stuff, I'm quite happy where I am. Of course, I've started in a new role in UKRI and stuff, and I'm also like, I've been taken well care of in terms of healthcare. I need regular visits and checkups for some of my health condition.
Okay.
So I think like that sort of setup work along with healthcare nearby, side by side, has worked very well for me in UK. So at least for the time being, I'm looking to stay there. But as I mentioned, that I'm also like a person who likes to move around a bit. In Oxford, when you were visiting me, I think I moved homes 4 times. Yes. And then I moved cities after that. So, and I think like you visited my home, and then I said I probably want to go to some other country as well. So I'm open to options, but like the kind of work that I'm doing, research funding and all that. And we have lots of collaborations with India as well. There are agreements with India where we are trying to co-fund research and improve collaborations between UK and India, and as well as other countries. So there are avenues. I always find that there are opportunities to give back, to our country as well, in terms of that. And one of the directions that I want to go is international development, hopefully in the future, where we are not only limiting our resources in the UK, for example, just to the country, because lots of the things that have been developed there can be easily transferred and helped worldwide. And there are lots of initiatives already in place. So that's one of the directions which I would look at in the future as well.
That would be very nice. I mean, I'm pretty sure that we all will be benefiting from those. If I was to ask you to just, lay down your experience-based advice for Indian students, intending to pursue their PhD, uh, what would it be, and what would be your general advice to Indian students?
Yeah, I would say, like, take your time. Don't get married to the research topic that you have done during your undergrad or masters. There is so many directions that you can go to. So it's very important to understand the landscape and the opportunities available to you. So that's where you come in. Your organization comes in as well. And I think it's there are opportunities out there. Take initiative. Try to understand the opportunities that are out there, and be honest with yourself on what sort of pathway that you want to take. It's going to be a bit difficult, and it's always going to be, life's not easy. But with a bit of perseverance, and when you know that I'm interested in this, it'll automatically come. You will work hard, and you will learn from your mistakes and failures, and then you will eventually succeed in what you want to do. But it's important to first, be honest to yourself, understand what's out there, challenge yourself a bit, because at that point, because I wasn't all those, I learned it the hard way. When I started, I felt like, okay, physics PhD is the only way, postdoc is the only way, but there were so many other ways which Oxford, for example, opened up for me. And because I let myself, I went to those, and I with an open mind. I was like, there are going to be several ways, let's just explore, and I will fail and I'll move. When I was in Oxford, I'll give you an example. Like, to change my field from a specialist to a generalist, it took me 11 months. 11 months of searching, soul searching, and searching outside. I visited so many. The Oxford has a great careers team. I had a mentor there. I spoke to 60 different companies.
Wow.
I went and worked for a charity. I became a trustee there. I went and applied to different fields and different directions, starting from pharmaceuticals, agriculture, instrumentation companies, all those. And I pivoted all the time, because it's never going to be like this is the set field and you cannot come back and change it. There's always going to be a way back. There's always going to be, different directions where you can pivot. It just took me a bit longer. And after, I had the mentors, and they told me that probably you should look at a generalist role. Look at research and innovation funding to start with. Look at the innovation space, which is UK's strength as well. So when I started meeting different people for the first time in my life, I was always amongst physicists until I was postdoc in Oxford. And then I met social workers from Africa, for example. I met a little girl from Sri Lanka who is trying to sort of advocate planting 1 million trees via the Skoll World Forum, which is the largest philanthropic sort of networking group. And I met CEOs of companies. I met civic bodies, and I met all sorts of people. That opened my mind up, and I was being honest to myself that yes, I'm not really a specialist kind of person. I should probably go and be a generalist, And it took a bit of work, but then I'm there right now. It was all worth the journey. So having that open mind, having that flexibility, and being true to yourself, that would be my advice.
I think that's an excellent advice, because I have been of an opinion that it's super important for you to have a little bit more clarity about what you want to commit your life to when you start. And I think that helps. But as you say, like keeping an open mind, and we were chatting before we formally started to chat on camera. You were saying that flexibility. The world is moving at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
Whatever you're trying to think about of a topic which you want to marry to now is probably going to be either changing or irrelevant very soon.
Yeah. Because I always struggle with the question now. What do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? I don't think I can answer that anymore. If you would have asked me 2 years back, I would have said, yeah, I'm going to do physics and stuff. If you ask me right now, I'm going to say I probably don't know, because technology is moving so fast.
Yeah, I think also one thing I want to tell the students or young Indians be mindful of is that obviously you are in a space which is high on the value change pyramid, right? you are at the top of the tier of the value chain pyramid, and you are also exposed to those best, infrastructures, environments, wherein you can have a bouncing back of the ideas and probably pick options. Many of you might not have those options to start off with because you've got limited credentials, but you probably need a better strategy to maximize the way you can actually ensure that they still get enough opportunities which can do justice to your capabilities, abilities. And that's where we encourage students to actually make sure that they get in touch with people who are committed to help them and find a pathway which enables them to explore all possible opportunities that exist. But I love the advice you've given. I mean,
I think it's
being into education field, it helps us and my team as well, because we are counseling people every day, and till the time we meet you and people like you who actually are at the top tier right now, we also need to actually be just given a different dimension to our thought process and the advice we can pass on to.
There's always higher. There's so many tiers in always all the level. I was just also want to say like you might also not be aware of the options that are available to the students, and that's where I think your role is so critical. As becomes very critical, your role, students, mentors, their seniors.
We are always learning to make sure that we can actually help them get the either right advice or find a way to give them right advice and encourage them to do their own research, as you mentioned.
I'm thinking I was gonna say I was born in a family or in a kind of a area where engineering and being a doctor was the only the maximizing to go there, you'll be fine. And I just want to say to parents as well that there are so many other pathways you can go, which are slightly less competitive as well, which will be easier on your child as well, and also the students. There are so many paths, especially in Shillong. Shillong is a place when I came and I met people here. There's so many people who are working in government. There's so many people in your office who have done different fields. You have got somebody from an aviation background, you've got somebody from an English background, and they're all doing very, very good. I met somebody who was a lawyer, she's doing her law yesterday. There's so many fields, there's so many options, there's always going to be an option for you. So know what your options are and don't worry about it. I think you will figure your way out as long as you want to find a way out.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.